Hey guys, my name is Francisco Hernandez, and today I'm doing an editing video on this photo on the screen right here of Zadie that I took this past WPPI in March. In a second, I will throw the behind the scenes of that photo on the screen while I'll talk about today's sponsor, which is Adorama. Adorama is an industry-leading retailer that has been serving photography, videography, and audio customers for almost 50 years now. Their motto is everyone is a creator, and they do their best to unleash that creator within us all by providing us with the tools and expertise necessary to get the job done right. I personally shop at Adorama for both the great deals on products I use and recommend, plus the great customer service on those products as well. If you find yourself interested in any products in today's video, then definitely check out the links in the description area below for links to those products, and be sure to use those links if you decide to order. Obviously on the screen right now is an underexposed photo of Zadie, and I wanted to quickly explain that underexposure. The reason for that is because I deliberately have the brightness of my camera way too bright because I tend to shoot during the daytime and I want to see the photo very clearly in the day, but I know that it results in an underexposed photo. So that's why you're seeing this underexposed photo, because I have that brightness on the screen very, very bright. I'm gonna go ahead and just adjust that exposure now to be a little bit brighter. I think 1.4 looks pretty good. And the next thing I'm gonna do right now is go ahead and increase the saturation of the colors. And the way that I do this in Lightroom is in the develop module, all the way at the bottom in the calibration section, I'm gonna go to the blue primary saturation slider and bring it anywhere from 60 to 80. So I'm gonna go to 80. And this does always increase the saturation of the blues and the oranges way too bright. In this case, there's no blues to worry about, so I just need to focus on reducing the saturation of the oranges, which I'll do using the hue saturation luminance section here, specifically the orange saturation slider. So let me go ahead and just go to -15, and that looks pretty good to me. And now the next thing I want to do is go into the detail section and zoom in and see how the photo looks like. And something that I did prior to starting this video was I actually denoised the image using the new noise reduction plugin in Lightroom. It did take a couple minutes to process, which is why I did it before starting this video. So let me go ahead and just change the sharpness from 40 to 60. That was something that I was gonna already do, but now I'll show you guys the before I reduce the noise, which is gonna be this second image here. So this is before I reduce the noise. You can see so much grain here because I was shooting at ISO 4000, and I did adjust the exposure to be 1.4 stops brighter. So that's gonna be like ISO 10,000, maybe 8 to 10,000. So that's why there's so much noise. So the noise reduction did do a great job, because again, that's the before and this is the after. It is a little bit too smooth for my liking. I did reduce the noise, the adjustment, the setting that I had from 0 to 100, I did it at 40. So maybe in the future, I'll go ahead and reduce it to 30. Since I'm already zooming in on the eyes, let me go ahead and just make those eyes a little bit brighter. I use the shortcut K to go ahead and get the adjustment brush. And now I'm gonna paint over the eyes and then increase the exposure of the eyes using my dark eyes setting. Since the eyes are painted and she looks evil now, I'll go to the preset section and go to dark eyes, and then I'll go ahead and keep it like that. And now I'm gonna zoom out. And the next thing I want to adjust is probably the highlights in the back of her. Those lights are a little bit too bright, and also increase the shadows. With this section, I'm still in the adjustment brush section, which is also the masking section. So now I'll click on the plus here, go to select background, and it's gonna take a couple of seconds. I think it usually takes my slow computer about 6 to 8 seconds to select the background. And now that it's done, I'll go ahead and hover over this little square, and it did do a good job of selecting the background. It did get a little bit of her hair here and a little bit of the dress in the middle, but that's fine. Now with the background selected, I'll go to shadows and increase them to, let's say 50. That looks pretty good to me. And I'll decrease the highlights to maybe -50. And that actually looks pretty good to me. I feel like this is still a little bit too bright. So I'm gonna go ahead and click on the plus again and go on to brush this time. And now I'll just paint over this highlight that I feel like was a little bit too bright, and then do a little bit more of reduction in the highlight section. -40 looks pretty good. And now I feel like, you know what, I'll go ahead and just reduce it a little bit too. The last thing I want to do now in terms of the adjustment brush section is add just a little bit more of brightness towards just her. So I usually do this to the subject just to give them a little bit of extra pop. So I'll just do a very quick brush over her, and maybe increase the brush and do just a very quick light brush there. And now go to, let's say 0.5. 0.5 is a little too bright. Let's go to 0.4. 0.4 looks much better. So now just exit the adjustment brush section. The very last step that I want to do in Lightroom with this Lightroom edit is adjust the colors. I feel like the skin tone has a little bit too much greens, and I feel like the image is a little bit too warm. So I'll just adjust the temperature to be 40, let's say 4100, maybe 4200. Because 4100 looked a little too cool. So 4200, and then I'll adjust the tints to be 11. And I feel like now it's a good image. And now I'll go ahead and just export this image into Photoshop and then continue the edit there. The very first thing that I always do in Photoshop is go ahead and just remove distractions before I go ahead and add dodge and burn and frequency separation. So I'm gonna go ahead and just speed through this distraction removal because it is just tedious stuff. I did want to add real quickly though, before I do that distraction removal, is I always do the distraction removal on a new blank layer rather than on the actual layer itself. I did pretty much all the distraction removal I wanted to do with the exception of one strand hair and that light there on the bottom. I feel like it will be perfect for the new generative tool in Photoshop beta, but I want to work in Photoshop final version, the non-buggy version, before I go ahead and move into the beta version. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just merge the distraction layer and the background layer, and then I'm gonna go ahead and just get the dodge and burn layers, which I always do with the curves adjustment layers, which is gonna be this curves layer right here. I always bring this middle line to the top right there, this next line up, and then I'll just name it dodge. And then I want to invert the mask using Control or Command I. And then I'll get another curves adjustment layer. And then I'll go ahead and just bring that one down to the next line down. And then I'll name that one burn. And then I'll invert the mask as well. With dodge and burn, my goal really is to add just a little bit more depth and a little bit more pop to that subject. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and just add a little bit of brightness towards the center of any limbs and a little bit of darkness using the burn layer towards the sides of the limbs. And that adds that little bit of depth. And when it comes to doing dodge and burn on the face, if there's bags underneath the eyes, which I see a little bit on Zadie's camera right eye, what I'll do is just add a little bit of brightness on that bag. And then if there's anything else that needs to be brightened or darkened, I use these two layers, dodge and burn, to go ahead and do that. I am gonna go ahead and just skip this part as well because this is again something that will make the video much longer if I go through every second of dodge and burn with you guys. It is important to go ahead and leave the flow at 1% with the opacity at 100% because you don't want to go ahead and just leave that flow like at 100% or 50%. Let's just keep it 100 because now when you go ahead and add any sort of brightness or darkness, it's too bright right away. It's just very bright right away. And you want it to be very gradual. I'm gonna go ahead and just change the flow back to 1% and then now I'll continue. One thing that I forgot to mention is that whenever I do dodge and burn on the face to reduce like the bags underneath the eyes or any sort of patchy skin, is I'll go ahead and get a black and white adjustment layer. And what I'll do is I'll reduce the reds and the yellows till I can see more of those patchy, darker areas in the skin so I can correct them better. So I can see them better visually so I can go ahead and correct them. Quick example is, like I said before, the bag underneath her eye, her right eye. This area is a little bit dark while the area around it is bright. So what I'm gonna do is go ahead and get the dodge layer, and then I'll go ahead and just quickly paint on that bag underneath her eye to bring it to the same exposure as the area that was around that bag underneath her eye. So now that I did that, I'm gonna just deselect this layer, click this on and off, and you can see that I fixed that. So now I'll continue. And now I'm finally done with the dodge and burn. So I'll show you guys, this is the before and this is the after. You can see much more like kind of pop in this leg here and a little bit above the thigh. You can see this is the before, this is the after again. Again, usually with this dodge and burn, I just want to add a little bit more depth. And I feel like that I created really good with this dodge and burn. Now that the dodge and burn is done, I'll go ahead and go to frequency separation. So I actually do have an action that does all these different steps together. I just need to work on it a little bit more before I set it. So that's why I'm doing everything manually in this video. So the thing that you want to do right now is click on this plus layer. You're adding a blank layer. You're gonna hit Command or Control Alt Shift E. That makes a copy of everything that we've done so far. Hit Command or Control J. Then I'm gonna name this bottom one L and this top one H, which is gonna stand for low and high. It's just the way that people talk about frequency separation, high and low, or color and texture. So with the L selected, the L layer selected, I'm gonna hold down Shift, click on the top one. It selects them both. Now hit Command or Control G. That groups them together. And then I'm gonna just name it FS for frequency separation. I'm gonna quickly deselect H so that I can see L better. And I'm gonna go ahead and now add some blur to this L layer by going to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. And I'm gonna click this square on her face. And usually what you're gonna aim for is to have a level of blur that's just a little bit like that, where you can still see the outline of the skin, but it's blurry. So now I'm gonna click OK. And now I'll click on H again. I'll re-enable the visibility, click on it, and now go to Image, Apply Image, and change the layer from H to L. And then this blending mode should be on multiply, but you do want to go to change it to subtract like it is right here, and then change the scale and the offset to 2 and 128. Click OK. And now after all these different steps, now you're going to change the blending mode of H to be linear light. And now you can continue to the next step, which is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and just zoom in on the skin and see if there's anything that I want to smooth, including the skin or the clothing. So I feel like her skin is pretty nice and even. everywhere that I'm looking, on her face, on her arm. So I don't think I really need to do anything except for maybe on the leg here. Whenever I see any area that needs to be fixed, then I'll go ahead and get my mixer brush, which I have selected right now. You guys can copy the different settings here on top. And then all I have to do right now to fix these kind of patchy areas of the skin is just do kind of light brush strokes on those areas that need to be fixed. I'm keeping in mind where I want to kind of have my shadows at, because there's a bright area here in the middle of the skin. I don't want to brush this into the shadow because then it won't make sense. So I'm trying to keep in mind where the highlights are, where the shadows are, so that I don't put one of those things into the other area that doesn't belong there. So now I'm going to go ahead and just do a little bit more brush strokes. I'm being very light with my brush strokes because it can easily go into too perfect looking skin. Let me just see how it looks like before and after. It does look a little too good, but I'll just go ahead and just leave it like this. And let's see this area of the knee. Now what I'll do is just, okay, I painted some of this green over here. So now I'll just go ahead and just paint up, and let's see if there's any area that needs to be fixed. Maybe this area here. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Let's see. I'll go ahead and just do the before and after, and it's just very light, you know, work on the leg. Now I'll just do the final step, which is going to be adjusting the colors. So the way that I adjust the colors is going to the adjustment area, go to selective color, and I honestly just play around with the sliders till I like how the image looks like. So that's exactly what I'm gonna do right now. I'll show you guys the results after I'm done experimenting with the different colors. Just finished with the selective color, so I'll just show you. This is the neutral, this is the whites, this is the greens, this is the yellows, and this is the reds. And let's just show you guys the before and the after. I feel like it gave a little bit more vividness. I feel like it's maybe borderline too kind of orangey, but you know, maybe I'll go ahead and just reduce the, you know, I'll move it first and then I'll just reduce the opacity to 80%. And now I feel like it's finally done. And now I just want to do those final little last steps in removing this little light here and maybe the straight hair in the back using the generative fill. I think that's what it's called, the generative tool in Photoshop Beta to do that, and then I'll finally be done. Now that I'm here in Photoshop Beta, I'm gonna use the lasso tool to go around this area here, this light that I want to remove. I'm gonna click generative fill, and I will click remove and start to remove it, you know, clicking the generate. The reason why I wanted to type remove is because what I found when I've used this tool is if I leave it blank and don't type anything, it might remove it, but it might give me the error that something non-appropriate was generated. So I click remove now to remove things because it gives me less chance of an error. So let's see what happens. It did remove it pretty good. So let me just zoom out. One thing I found about this generative fill layer is sometimes it will remove stuff, but it won't have the same noise as the surrounding area, specifically with this photo here, because it was very noisy to begin with. So what I'm gonna do is now go to filter, go to noise, go to add noise. And now I think at this exact setting here, 1.5 Gaussian monochromatic, it looks better. So this is the, you might be able to see it, but you might not. I can see it clearly, but it was a little bit too soft. And now with this noise added, it looks fine. Now I'm going to just zoom out. And when I typically save the full resolution file, I'll go ahead and just, you know, save right here. But what I want to do is also just, you know, click save, you know, Control S to save it. But I do want to show you guys how I would save it for Facebook and Instagram as well. So I'm going to go ahead and just right click background, go to flatten image, and yeah, discard the hidden layer, which is the black and white layer there. And now what I'm gonna do is hit Control Alt I, and that goes to the image resize or image size. I'm gonna change the height, which is the longest side, to 2048. I'm gonna keep it like that. I'm gonna zoom in. I'm gonna add a copy of that layer. Go to filter, go to other, go to high pass, and then I always keep it at 0.3 like this, and then change the blending mode of that layer to linear light, and then I might change it to like 50 or 60 depending on what the image needs. So let me just zoom in. This is the before, or this is the before and after. You can see it's sharper. So, you know, you don't want to abuse that sharpness. It can be too sharp, but I feel like something like 40% to 50% looks good. From here, then I'll just flatten the image or merge visible, and then I'll just save it for Facebook like this. But for Instagram, you do want to change the crop. So the thing that's great now with this generative fill layer is now I can go ahead and just go to 4:5. And if I wanted to keep the exact same crop, I didn't want to crop off her leg or be, you know, have her head too close to the top of the frame. Now what I can do is just zoom out like this. You want to have delete cropped pixels and content aware unchecked. Then you're gonna hit OK. And then now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just select the photo, but with a little bit of area at the edge there, the little border. I'm gonna click this here to invert it. Click generative fill, click generate, and now it'll extend the image for me. And it did an awesome job at extending the image. So now I'm pretty much done. That's pretty much the end of this video. I want to say one last thanks to Adorama for sponsoring this video, because sponsoring my videos allows me to make more free content for you guys. So definitely check them out. Hope this video was helpful. If you guys have any questions about anything that I've done in this video, let me know in the comment section below. But for now, I'll just say take care, and I'll see you guys in the very next video.